Hello crafters, this is Yana Smakula. Welcome back to my channel where I share handmade card ideas, tips, and tricks to help you be inspired. I filmed this video all the way back in March, before the quarantine, but I kept putting it aside on the back burner as other projects, videos, and ideas kept getting in the way. And of course, my cat. Spring is almost over, and since this video features spring cards, I thought I better publish it now. In this video, I'll show you a slightly different way to color your floral images with alcohol markers without the stress of blending. I'm not a pro when it comes to coloring, but I do enjoy it, and I know a lot of you enjoy it as well. If you are like me, you might feel hesitant about your coloring because you might fear the results will be poor. This is why I rarely color with watercolors, which I find to be a difficult coloring medium to color with. And I try to stick to simple images where I know I can't mess them up. This coloring method reminds me of graphic-like coloring. Think about a computer-generated graphics and limit that image to just a few colors. That image will have a clear transition between various shades of one color, so no gradual blending. Harsh lines that add color, define shadows, and highlights. You can use this coloring method with any images. I find that I like to use florals the most for this. The florals I'm using today are all from Pretty Pink Posh, but of course, this can be applied to other stamps just as easily. Here is a comparison of a traditional coloring method and the graphic-like coloring side by side. I colored the same image, I used the same colors of markers, but my technique was different. The one on the right is the one we will learn in this video. It is simple and nearly impossible to mess up. I've already stamped my images. These come from a Tulips stamp set from Pretty Pink Posh. I stamped images in Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink, which is a Copic marker-friendly ink, and I did my stamping on Yana Solar White 80-pound cardstock. I like to begin my graphic coloring by applying the lightest color to the entire image. Here I'm using the RV00 marker. When you color with Copics, you typically saturate your paper with the lightest color or go back to the lightest color to blend all of the colors together. While the paper is wet, it makes it easier to blend the colors, hence why you'd often start with the lightest color and apply it to the area you're coloring. When you color with alcohol markers in the usual way, you also do not color the entire image at once. You work in little sections. You color one petal at a time, as this allows the ink to remain wet long enough on that area to help you do your blending. Here, we don't want any blending to take place. In fact, it is rather better if the blending doesn't happen. So, color an entire image using your base color and even set it aside for a few seconds or even minutes to dry. I also applied my lightest green, this is YG03 color, to the stem and leaves. And I also set it aside to dry. With the base layer of the ink dry, I moved to use a darker marker, RV11. I used it to begin applying shadows to the petals on my tulips. I envisioned which parts of the petal would remain lightest. I preserved those areas and colored the rest of the petals with the RV11 marker. I did so for all three tulips that I have stamped. If you find it difficult to envision the shading, you can use a pencil and practice. So stamp a test image, use a pencil to separate the petals into 3 or 4 layers depending on how many markers you use, and then color each of those layers using a different marker color. Next, while the pink marker was drying, I used my darker green marker, G94, to add the same kind of shading to the stems and leaves. It is up to you how many marker colors you use to color your image in this way, depending on the image size and also depending on the size of your marker stash. You might want to use just 2 colors. Or if the image is big and you have a big marker collection, you can use 5, 6, or even more shades of one color. I would say don't overdo it, just do simple coloring. This is what this coloring method is all about to me. I've sped up my coloring quite a bit as it is a very simple process. Just apply color, no blending needed. If you are unsure where to apply the darker color, look up a similar image online and note which sections are dark and which are light. Or bring a tulip into your craft room and observe it as you color. Notice where the light is hitting the petals and the stems and which areas are shadowed. With a medium pink layer dry, I moved on to using a darker pink. This is RV34. Again, I preserved a portion of the petal, colored with the RV00 and RV11 markers, and only added this RV34 color to the area of the petal I imagined darker. The darker you go, the less of an area you cover. And again, remember, we're not blending anything, we're simply applying a solid layer of color. And again, I let the pinks dry. We don't want the colors to blend. We want there to be sharp lines between colors. I moved to use my darkest green G99 marker and applied the darkest green shadows to the stem and leaves. Next, I added darker pink to my petals on my tulips using the RV17 marker. And again, note how much smaller of an area I colored. I only applied this color to the darkest portions of my petals. I used Pretty Pink Posh, Magnolia, and Crocuses flower stems in the same way, but colored them using different marker colors to explore this technique a bit further. I did enjoy this coloring style, and while I can't say that it will work for every image in my stash or that I will use it daily, it is something I plan to come back to often. Since I was making this card in early spring, I picked Happy Spring Sentiment and stamped it in black. To add interest to the background, I foiled the polka dot border glimmer plate from Spellbinders from my Foiled Basics collection in gold foil on light gray cardstock panel. In fact, I have foiled several panels at once to save time, and now I just pull the ones that I like and I use them for my cards. I do have a separate video that explains the hot foiling process in detail, and then another video showing my entire Glimmer hot foil plate collection with Spellbinders if you'd like to check it out. And I have those videos linked here in the cards and also below in the video description. If you don't have a hot foil system, you can of course add interest to your background with other techniques like dry embossing, perhaps dry emboss something with a pretty embossing folder, or you can heat emboss a simple design using a background stamp. And of course, you can keep your background plain as is if that is what you like. I trimmed my foiled panel to about 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches and foam mounted it onto an A2 white side folding card base. To add dimension to my tulips, I used a coordinating die that I had used previously to cut this image out, and I die cut 4 layers from scrap white cardstock. I have already glued those layers together, and now I'm gluing them behind my colored tulips. This will provide a solid layer of dimension to those images, and I won't have any sagging that might happen if you use foam adhesive squares. I also die cut 4 layers for that single tulip image and did the same thing to add dimension. And then I used glue to adhere the tulips onto my card. Using cardstock to add dimension does make your card heavier, but it also makes it a lot more sturdy. There are weight and heft to it. That isn't ideal for mailing a card because it is heavier, it will cost you more to mail it. So if you plan to mail your project, maybe stick to using fun foam and foam adhesive squares. Finally, I used Pretty Pink Posh gold confetti to embellish my card as I thought the gold confetti circles complemented the foiled background dots perfectly. I hope you enjoyed this video and you will give this coloring method a try. If you do, please share online and tag me. I love seeing what you guys are making. If you're new here, please consider subscribing and do hit that bell icon to be notified about every new upload. Love you guys, and I'll see you next week.